We are live from Santa Fe, New Mexico. I'm Ajahn Sona, and we invite your questions in the chat bar. Let's hear the first question, Pia.
Ajahn, our first question today is from the chat bar from No One Everyone in Iran. Dear Ajahn Sona, having relinquished the problem of suffering, having completely surpassed ignorance, does a Buddha attain omniscience or omnipotence or both? Does an arahant? Or are there such states as omniscience and omnipotence at all? Though not being anywhere near the focus of the Eightfold Path, there are many reports of bhikkhus exhibiting various supernormal abilities, and of course the reported capabilities of the Buddha himself are beyond ordinary comprehension. Thus it leaves an ordinary mind wondering about the possibility of such states of being.
Yeah, that's a question asked in the commentaries frequently, and it's in the suttas as well. Is it possible to be omniscient, meaning to know everything? The contemporary of the Buddha, the Jain leader, claimed to be omniscient. And the Buddha critiqued that. He said it's not possible to know everything at once. You know, the infinite number of things that occur in the universe is not possible to know all at once. But it is possible to know that which he wished to know at any given time. So you can imagine if you knew everything, what your mind would look like. It would be, infinitely full. So the Buddha's mind is not infinitely full. He can direct his attention to what he wishes to know and get an answer to that. But that is not omniscience. And omnipotent, meaning, complete power over everything. The Buddha is not powerful over everything. He has an illness, he dies, etc. He is subject to the aches and pains of the human body. So, yeah, he's neither omnipotent nor omniscient, but he is more or less has full knowledge of that which is pertinent to the teaching of the Dhamma. As far as other monks go, they're listed in the suttas as having certain what we would call extrasensory perceptions, the capacity for knowledge that is not obvious as to where it comes from. So this is right to this time in history, and throughout history we see claims of various people, very frequently in the religious worlds, where they're claiming to have seen things at a distance that your ordinary eyesight cannot see. They hear things at a distance. So they say they read the minds of others, or embrace the minds of others, know the minds of others somehow. So it's not exclusive to Buddhism. It's reported in most cultures and most times in history. In Buddhism, it's attributed to arising from deep samadhi, the practice of these concentration exercises where you're stilling your mind, especially if you can get it to go into a deep state of stillness. After it emerges, you can access knowledge that is not available to the ordinary mind. The ordinary mind, by the way, is quite scattered, is flitting from subject to subject, cannot focus and stay on a single subject for long periods of time. And it tends to be very discursive. In other words, you're talking to yourself, etc. This deep stillness mind is supernormal. It's not what normal people experience, but you can train yourself to do it. It's just like being a great concert violinist is not a normal experience. How does it happen? Well, it seems that people have an inclination that way. They're they're talented in a certain way, but then they have to put in significant years of practice as well, and then they perform in a supernormal way. They get up at Carnegie Hall and play these things, which are quite beyond the capacity of normal people. Nobody can do that who isn't trained and have talent. And so this is what humans can do. And so the spiritual practice, especially in Buddhism, it's not simply, you're not praying to God or anything like this. This is it's primarily psychological. You're practicing mental exercises, which makes you, if you're successful at it and have capacity for it, then you become a virtuoso of these kind of capacities. Not everybody, though. There are fully enlightened people, arahants, that don't have any of these psychic capacities, special capacities. So it's not something that always comes along with the ability to concentrate. So yeah, that's a question which you'll find in some of the ethnic cultures in Sri Lanka, Thailand, Burma. The Buddha has sort of morphed into almost a god-like figure, and the folk belief would be that the Buddha would know everything and so be omniscient and so forth. But this is not the case. The Buddha himself never claimed that, but he claimed special insights into human behavior and motivations, and also he claimed to be free of greed, hatred, and delusion, which is the whole point of the exercise. The psychic capacities are side effects. They're referred to in the sutta as ornaments, a kind of jewelry, that quite beautiful little things that are side effects of the cultivation of the mind, but not the main point. They're ornaments. So let's go to the next question.
Next question from the live stream is from Vadana in California, United States. Please explain what one should do next once the mind is completely absorbed with the breath and there is a lot of piti and sukha observed by the mind.
There are several schools of practice, and some would even discourage the practice of the jhanas, the deep states of concentration. This is some of the Vipassana-oriented schools. Primarily, it's hard to reconcile with the early teachings of the Buddha, who recommended and praised the practice of both of samadhi and the cultivation of insight, that is vipassana. One thing, though, is that samadhi in itself is a reward. It's the 8th factor of the Eightfold Path and requires quite a bit of discipline and training to get there. What precedes that samadhi is right effort, right mindfulness. The 6th and 7th factors of the path are the prerequisites for coming to this 8th factor, which is the jhana. Vandana is referring to the first jhana with applied and sustained attention. With joy, that is piti, and ease, happiness of the body, and single focus. These are the 5 factors of the first jhana. And they are very profitable in themselves. They have a high resultant, a very profitable resultant, and one should not rush on from it. If you can manage to attain it, then the next obligation is, or the next development is to sustain it. And so these are the kind of recommendations you get in the commentaries, and I don't think they would and basically in agreement with the suttas, is that if you can manage to find your way into some samadhi, some concentration, then you don't need to worry about sustaining it at first. What you need to concern yourself with is, how did I do that? And how can I do that again? And how can I do that faster? So what you're practicing is learning how to enter into this state of focused awareness. How do I manage to focus sometimes? What is it that makes me unfocused? And you can look at a bunch of causes for that. People, noise, traveling, stress, bad food, lack of sleep, being too cold or being too hot, uncomfortable. All of these things can make it difficult to focus. And so the opposite would be the kind of conditions that would help you focus. Being around people who are very calm and don't disturb you, that are focused themselves. So that's very, very helpful. You know, if you want to learn how to juggle, you go to jugglers. If you want to learn about music, you go to musicians. If you want to learn about mathematics, you go hang out with mathematicians. So the same with this ability to focus. You try to be around people who are focused instead of unfocused, chaotic, noisy, disturbed. So you would, then that assists you when you're in the presence of other focused people, very calm, clear people, that helps you. And then the right temperature, and the right food conditions, and the right health conditions. So if you're in pain, or you got a toothache or something, it may be very difficult to focus. So these are the kind of things that help you learn to enter this, and then your next job is to stay in long. So you try to stay focused for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40, 50, an hour, 2 hours, more. It's possible to stay in these states for a day, even 2 days, 3 days. That's pretty virtuoso kind of practice, but you're lengthening this time. And by the way, so this is an exquisitely pleasant state of mind, emotionally and mentally and physically. If you can get into these states, it's beautiful. And then your last task, which is the most easy, is to learn how to withdraw from the state and come back to the state of mind that allows you to interact with other people and communicate. Because in these states, you're not on the same in the same state which conversation requires, or appropriate behavior in a crowd, or even like normal tasks. Your ability to speak even is reduced. So you need to learn how to switch back to normal communication activity, like normal social procedures, out of this deep concentration. So some monks they get into this state of samadhi, and they're having difficulty coming out of it, so they don't respond to questions properly, or they don't interact. They tend to be just silent, and even simple tasks like dialing a telephone can be a little hard to do because you're in a state of this kind of deep serenity. It's kind of like sleep. So the same with sleep. People have trouble going to sleep, and then they have to learn, open the window, get some fresh air, don't watch TV, don't watch the news, don't take coffee just before you go to bed, all of the things that prevent you from sleeping. Then you learn how to maximize the opportunities for sleep. Then you learn how to get to sleep quickly. And then some people wake up through the sleeping, They drink too much water or tea or something before they go to bed, and they have to keep getting up to go to the washroom, so they have to reduce the liquids so that they can stay asleep. And then finally, you have to learn how to wake up out of sleep. Sleep is an extraordinary experience. If most people didn't sleep and a few people could sleep, a lot of people would be skeptical that such a thing is possible. We all do this for 6 or 8 hours at night. We go into some sort of weird trance where we're lifeless for 6 or 8 hours. How do we do that? And by the way, it's very necessary and restorative, isn't it? A good night's sleep makes your mind function. So the same with the question that Vandana is asking, what do we do after that? Well, if you can get some samadhi, your mind will be in a very clear state for any kind of activity that you need to do, both worldly types of activity and spiritual investigation or psychological investigation. So this is the benefit. Think of samadhi as as necessary as sleep for the refreshment and clarification of the mind. Okay, let's go on.
Ajahn, our next question from the live chat is from Matthias in Finland. When a sotapanna is reborn, how does one remember that they are a sotapanna? Is it through contacting the teachings? Do the suttas talk about this?
Yes, the suttas talk about this. So for the general audience, a sotapanna is the first stage of enlightenment, the stream enterer, we would say in English. There are 4 stages of enlightenment, and the first stage is very important, very special. And if a person manages to do that, it's kind of like you've got your foot in the door, which leads to the exit from samsara into nibbana or nirvana. This state is irreversible, by the way. And if you attain this state, it persists even through death into the next life. And it's fascinating information. It's nothing in the West, nothing in the Bible or the Quran or any of these have anything like the information that's in the Buddhist text. Like, what they're saying is that if one attains to this stage of enlightenment, it's irreversible, and you have a maximum of 7 lifetimes before you are finished your journey in samsara, before you have attained this nibbana, this highest, the summit of the possibilities of life. And it's pretty well inevitable, but how long it takes, it depends on the circumstances around you. So let's say you attain sotapanna, you're 50 years old, and you make a breakthrough into this first stage of enlightenment. It changes your attitude to life. You have much more gentle, great reduction in greed and in hatred and in delusion. So that person, the sotapanna, is much more inclined to generosity and kindness and lucidity, clarity. And they're very virtuous. They're very gentle with other beings. They don't torment other beings. They don't kill other beings. They don't steal. They're faithful in relationships and so forth. So, and they tend to abstain from they abstain from the use of intoxicants because they're interested in the experience of being conscious and alive. For them is a pleasant experience, and they don't want to distort it through drugs or alcohol. So this is the sotapanna, and then they die sometime after they have attained this, and then they're not finished with samsara. They might be born as a human. By the way, so one of the things they claim in the suttas is that you will not be born below the human realm. You won't fall into lower realms. You are safe from the lower realms. You know, in the West we have ideas about heaven and hell and so forth, and these are very sketchy. In the early Western texts like the Old Testament, heaven, it's very difficult to pin down what they believed about whether or not you went to heaven and so forth. And then Christianity comes along. And then there's definite talk about heaven and hell. But still, there's no particular articulation of what this is. It's only much later in Christianity that they start talking about describing what hell is and what heaven is in a more detailed way. You get this famous text in the 12th century AD called the Divine Comedy, which introduces the idea of purgatory as well. So you have all these levels of hell and levels of purgatory and levels of heaven. So they produce something like 30 levels of places that you can go after you die. I'm always suspicious that they borrowed off Buddhist texts, because Buddhism had this kind of idea of a 31 or 32 level universe long before, in the 5th century BC, like 1700 years before the Divine Comedy. and the Catholic Church has integrated these kind of ideas of purgatory and so forth. So the Buddhism says that you cannot fall below rebirth in the human realm after Sotapanna. By the way, in Christianity, you seem to not, the option of being reborn as a human doesn't seem to be there. You either go to heaven or hell or purgatory or something like that. But in Buddhism, it's possible to reemerge as a human. And maybe that's the majority experience. So this person is born, and they have all the characteristics of this Sotapanna. They are, right from earliest times, like mothers see their children have personalities when they're very, very young, you know. Some of them are quarrelsome and difficult and sullen, and others are very even, or you see little generosity or happiness very, very early in the personality. So from a Buddhist point of view, it's not a mystery. It's not just genetics either. You're just coming in bringing things from the past life. And the Sotapanna they don't remember that they're a Sotapanna. They just like they don't remember that they used to be a happy person. They just are a happy person. They're kind of who they are. And they may never even know this word, Sotapanna or stream entry. It's possible to be a stream enterer, first stage of enlightenment, and not know it. You only know it by referring to these classifications. Just like it's possible to be musical and not know it. There's lots of musical people walking around, they're whistling to themselves and everything. Having been a musician, I was in the music faculty at University of Toronto, and the janitor, there's a little Italian guy sweeping the floors all the time, and he's whistling and singing to himself little opera arias, you know. And I realized, you know, he's probably more talented than some of the people in the opera department. This guy's really got a good ear. But he doesn't know that. Some people have mathematical abilities, but they don't know that. You have all kinds of abilities that you don't know that you have. You might be very intelligent, but not know that. Why would you not know that you're intelligent? Because it's actually a comparison. You're more intelligent than this person, but less intelligent than that person. Most people don't know how intelligent they are or how stupid they are. They have to write these tests, these IQ tests, and then you find out, oh, you're very intelligent. And they think, oh, am I? Wow, I didn't know that. So the Sotapanna is very spiritual, very kind, has kindness, clarity, kindness, generosity, and lucidity. But they may not know that they have a classification as this Sotapanna. But they will act on that in this life, in the next life, in the next life, up to 7 lives. But it's pretty well inevitable. They're moving towards this full realization. And it will occur within, as they say, 7 lifetimes. So fascinating stuff. I mean, when I first came across this, reading this stuff 45 years ago, it was an amazing thing. You know, it's kind of like reading modern psychology, where they talk about different personality traits. You know, there's types of autism and people who have supernormal talents, photographic memories, all of this stuff that is just amazing. Perfect pitch for musicians. Certain small percentage of the population has absolute pitch. They always have an absolute reference in terms of when they hear a note, they know exactly what that note is without any relative reference. This is, people have amazing capacities, you know. So it's, reading the suttas is like reading psychology, you know. Okay, let's go on to the next question.
Next question is from Anonymous in Kansas City, Missouri, United States. If a person with ADHD, restlessness, and inability to focus can only focus reasonably with the use of Ritalin or Adderall, both are central nervous system stimulants, is that ability to develop samadhi still helpful toward liberation? Or would it be ineffective because the person can only concentrate with the help of a drug? And maybe even more importantly, does such medication count as intoxication?
Yeah, good question. For normal operation, and this is the way it is for lots of people, they don't have time for extensive retreats and meditation and taking weeks or months or years out of their life for this. They think they don't have time, in a way. So most people just want a pill. If there is a pill, they just take a pill. And then, and it helps them perhaps. So this is the standard thing. And it's not because they want intoxication. They're not aspiring to intoxication. They're actually aspiring to more clarity. They want to reduce their distraction. And so those Ritalin and so forth are recommended by, you know, doctors and psychiatrists. But if they can take time out of their life and do some meditation activities, they might find that they can clear it up. I think most people, even people who are quite competent in the world, they might be a neurosurgeon or a concert violinist or something like this, and they come to a meditation retreat, they're quite startled to find out that they really can't sustain concentration for very long on a simple object like the breath. So most people can concentrate for a period of time if the stimulus is strong enough. So they're watching a horror movie or a romance, you know, or a comedy, or they're parachuting or bungee jumping, or, you know, if you're going to bungee jump, you'll be quite focused for about 3 seconds. You'll be paying attention as you fall through the air. But that's a strong stimulus that catches your attention. Most people dread to be alone in an unstimulated room, in a quiet room alone. They will seek stimulation. They can't stand the lack of stimulation. So the Buddha is telling you how you improve your concentration and your ability to experience life in an enjoyable way is to reduce your exposure to stimulation. Reduced stimulation strengthens the mind. So if you want to strengthen your body, you move it around. But if you want to strengthen your mind, you keep it still. So the nature of the mind is to run around. And the more it runs around, the weaker it is. Maybe the nature of the body is to just stay still, a couch potato. But you to strengthen it, you need to move it. You need to exercise it, to move it around. It strengthens it. But the mind is the opposite. Instead of, its tendency is to ramble around, but you need to teach it to sit. Sit, boy, sit. This is the case with a dog as well. A dog's mind is restless too, and you get a puppy that is untrained, and it just is a nuisance. It barks all night, runs all over the place. But you learn, you train it, and its mind is trainable, and it becomes then a good companion. If its mind is trained, it becomes a good companion. If your mind is trained, it will become a good companion. But if you don't train your mind in this way, it will be an enemy to you. It will constantly be unsatisfied. It won't know how to experience satisfaction. So most people just take a little dose of medicine and just live with this rambling monkey mind. But if you can take much more time out of your life to practice these meditation exercises, you will, what the point of it is to make your life better. Meditation is not a mysterious thing. It's everybody wants to be happy and they seek happiness. They just don't know how to get it. So meditation is just a way to improve the inner quality of your life. And by the way, when we say your life, what we really mean is your mind, because your mind is your life. You experience your life through your mind. And if you can improve the quality and the practical aspects of your mind, your whole life improves. And it won't improve any other way. You can't just improve your life by externals. You need to have skills and knowledge about how the mind works in order to improve the quality, the happiness, the quality of your life. So I think a lot of people who are on Ritalin, they have ADHD. This seems to be an explosion of, attention deficit syndrome, or whatever it is. Part of it is the entire culture is engaged in frivolous activity. It's from morning to night. It's cartoons. When you're a kid, it's just like you're exposed to just endless stimulus and entertainment, and your mind becomes duller because of this, not more vivid or vibrant. It becomes duller because you're overstimulating it. And the opposite needs to be done, but most people can't understand this. They don't even think in these ways. So the Buddha is very advanced in this. He understands how this happens. But are people willing to go against the stream of the whole culture? Are you willing to reduce your stimulus? Are you willing to live in a more tranquil and quiet and more refined way? Because this alienates you from the way most people live. So this is why people don't, like only a minority of the population goes in that direction. Okay, let's go on to the next question.
Next question from the live stream is from Marlene in Austria. Dear Ajahn Sona, can you please explain exactly how to practice mindful eating? How do you deal with food that you don't like?
Well, the whole practice for monks is to become equanimous about food. We do a reflection before we eat. We take this food not for fun, not for sporting, not for beautification, only for the maintenance of the body, for living the holy life as a support. So food is a support for your pursuit of well-being in your mind. And this is, you become more equanimous. You're not looking for happiness in food all the time. You still have your preferences. Some food disagrees with you. You don't like it. And other food you like. But because you like the taste of it or something like that. But the fact that you like the taste of it or you don't like the taste of it doesn't need to make you unhappy. I mean, you can still be a happy person who is eating food that is not to your taste. And you can also be not too swept away by excitement when you encounter food that is agreeable to your taste. So the Buddha himself would have experienced food that he knew perfectly well, that was well prepared, or what the world calls delicious, and then food which is badly prepared and not what the world calls delicious. It would be not taste very good. He knows what that is, but his well-being and happiness is not affected by this encounter. So he says the food that you eat is only one kind of food. Another type of food is that through the eye. So sights are a type of food. Sounds are a type of food. Smells are a type of food. Touches are a type of food. And thoughts are a type of food. Consciousness is a type of food. And certain thoughts are distasteful to you, and certain thoughts are enjoyable to you. Certain sights are pleasant, some are unpleasant. You see a beautiful blue sky and the mountains in the distance, very pleasant to you, and then a garbage dump, or these terrible street camps, with people all like zombies all over the sidewalk. These are negative sights and positive sights. So the same way, you're to remain equanimous in the midst of this. You see, yes, this is the nature of the world. Sometimes it's pleasant, sometimes it's unpleasant, sometimes it's neutral. And those come through the six senses, through the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, and the mind. And so food is just one version of these. I lived in Thailand for quite some time, and we went on alms round. And this is a culture a farming culture in the remote areas that lives mostly on sticky rice. So for most of the Western monks that were there, they were raised in cultures that hardly ever eat rice. And if to get it every single day, and by the way, you only eat once a day. So the main portion of your meal every single day is this sticky rice. And if you don't, you just eat it, and hopefully it sustains your body, So this is a practice. You practice this and you get less attached to these little sensory experiences of sights and sounds, smells, tastes, touches, and even withdrawal from needing to think all the time as well.
Next question from the live stream is from Chris in Fairview, Oregon, United States. Dear Ajahn Sona, is time real or is it another delusion? My experience of it passing fluctuates throughout the day, leading me to believe it's another delusion. What's your experience?
Well, most people, time is a subjective experience and an objective criteria for science. So there's two types of time, and you don't want to get them confused. There's clock time, and the clock theoretically, if you set the clocks, around the United States and so forth, they all, and if they're atomic clocks, they'll all agree with each other. But you, in your own life, you experience the morning as dragging on, and then the afternoon flies by, and then the night is almost non-existent, and etc. So as humans, we're concerned with the sense of subjective time, and it's very affected by our attitude. The sense of time changes as you meditate and as your mind becomes more trained. You can pass days and days and days in a very simple, like living in a cave or in a little cottage with no stimulus, no company or anything. And you can pass it very pleasantly, and the sense of time, you don't even have a sense of time. So when you're absorbed in something, if you're really interested in a puzzle or a piece of music or something, then you don't have a sense of time. how long was it? Then somebody calls you, oh, it's time to go, the taxi's here, and you suddenly realize, they ask you, well, how long were you listening to that program, or how long were you reading that book? You say, I don't know. There was no time there. It wasn't a time experience, it was just absorption. So your sense of time, it helps you realize that how your practice is going. So if time is dragging, you feel boredom and so forth. These are actually just negative attitudes to the lack of stimulus in the environment. Boredom is a form of aversion or hostility, and you don't like the experience that you're in. So if you can learn to focus more, then you'll have much less boredom in your life, because even a very simple, unstimulated environment will be fine. You'll be really okay with that. So this kind of experience of time is very important in the spiritual world. Scientific time, objective time, is almost irrelevant to our lives. We know what it is. We said, be here at, we do the live stream at 9 o'clock, 9 a.m. Pacific time. And you show up for the live stream at a certain time. That's science time. And it's useful. It's not something that we need to fight against, but it's not where we live. Where we live is in subjective time, and that is very elastic. Subjective time is very elastic, flows and slow and fast. Remember being a child, maybe the summer vacation, you got 2 months off between grade 2 and 3, and it seemed like an eternity. And then later on, you get holidays from work when you're 35, and you got a month off maybe, and that's not enough. It flies by. Okay, let's go on to the next question.
Next question from the live stream is from Water. I heard people consider it a result of bad karma if someone is reborn with a disability. My son has a severe mental disability, and I find that hard to believe. What did the Buddha teach on this subject?
Well, all systems, whoever you are, all systems, including science, refers to causes, why the situation is like that. And like in modern times, we would say, oh, it's genetic, so the cause of this mental problem is genetic, and it is being caused in the past, and its genes were mistreated, or your genes were distorted, maybe in interaction with a negative environment. So we also attribute illnesses, mental illnesses, physical illnesses, deformities of the body are explained away through combination of environment and genetics in science. We're just adding another dimension. But by the way, Buddhism doesn't deny genetics. And it doesn't deny the influence of environment. Those are laws that take place and affect humans. And there's also psychology, so just being we know that some mental illnesses are caused by your upbringing. If you see these cases of, there's a famous case of, I think it was Hungary after the war, orphans, and there were many orphans after the war, and they were put in these orphanages where nobody touched them. They just gave them food, and nobody talked to them or held them or anything like this, and it caused sustained damage. Most of them never recovered to proper relationship with others. So you can see the environment is the human environment, the psychological environment is hugely effective on the person in their development. We're just saying that some of the causes for mental illness, deformities of the body, etc., are not just genetic and not just environmental, but they have causes deeper into the past in previous lives. And we're not blaming the victim here. We all do, if you are fooling around when you're 2 years old and you fall off the chair and cut yourself, they take you to the hospital, stitch you up, you'll have that scar when you're 80 years old. There'll be a scar across your face. And somebody say, well, what happened? Oh, when I was 2, I was fooling around and, stupid, and I fell off a chair. So now I have a scar. Well, you caused it. It's not, you wouldn't do it now. You're 70 years old. You wouldn't do that now. But that trace of that previous being, you at 2, is still manifesting on your body. So, like, what if you decide impulsively to quit school in grade 8? Like you're 13 or 14, you're having trouble and you don't like this anymore, and you make an immature decision to quit school in grade 8 and go off, and then you, 50 years later, you have no pension, or you had to do manual work and so forth, and this is the result of a decision a 14-year-old made. And we're not blaming we're not blaming the 14-year-old. It's just decisions and intentional activities that have taken place, and they have results. They have long-term results, and it's because of that decision. It's not genetic, and it's not environmental. It was just a spontaneous, thoughtless decision made by somebody that could have been 10 years old, or etc. And it plays out all throughout your life. If you're in a culture that is convinced that there is only one life, that you're born and you die and there is no previous life, then you will find the explanations of karma mysterious. But in cultures, which is a very large portion of the population of the world, does have a concept of previous lives, and those activities in those lives are playing themselves out in the present life. And that's just the way it is. That's just nature. Okay, well, let's go on to another question here.
The next question is from Sacho in New South Wales, Australia. What is the Buddha's view on the purpose of existence and life itself?
Yeah, the priority in life is the reduction of suffering and the increase of well-being and happiness. And it's not in the conventional sense. Most people want to be happy, but they think just winning the lottery or having a better job or something is the only kind of happiness that is possible. But those are very uncertain kind of experiences. They come and they go. And most people won't get what they want. So he suggests that you come at it more philosophically, and you determine to generate well-being and happiness within yourself as much as possible, independent of the circumstances around you. So this turns the world inside out. Most people, and it's our nature, we just look for happiness through the senses. You want sights and sounds and smells and tastes and touches and ideas. And when you don't get the ones you want, you're unhappy. And when you get the ones you want, you're happy. But the problem is, it's very difficult to control that situation. You can't always get the sight you want, the sound, the smell, the taste, the touch, the ideas that you want. And that leaves you in a very precarious situation. You can imagine, the whole 20th century is an example of that. Vast populations pulled into wars. We just went through a pandemic. In a family, somebody gets cancer or illness or in a car accident, and on and on and on it goes. So if your happiness is dependent on circumstances, then it's very uncertain. And there's an anxiety about it. Even if things go well, it's possible that they could fall apart any moment. And people know that, and they feel that anxiety in the pit of their stomach. Even when things are going well, they think, what if I lose it all? So the Buddha is trying to solve this fundamental human problem. But it takes listening, So this is, the Buddha realized a lot of people they're not open to this idea. They just go to the natural one, the instant gratification kind of thing. But some will listen. He called this the ones who will listen, those with little dust in their eyes. There are those with little dust in their eyes that see the situation and wonder if there's a good philosophical approach to this. And then the Buddha is a very good philosophical teacher for how to reduce unnecessary suffering. Now, what remains is the fact that our bodies are biological machines that are vulnerable. And the Buddha doesn't propose that some miraculous way you can not get sick or anything like this. You break your bones, you fall down, you get sick, you get this and that. The Buddha himself got sick. And so we don't have any naive notion that you can just not, there's some fantastic health food remedy that you'll never get sick again kind of stuff. The body is a problem. It will get sick, it will age, it will die. How do you minimize the impact of this? Through your mind. So you make the body's, the Buddha says, make a castle of your mind and know that the body is a fragile jar. So the mind is what you fortify as the castle, and you develop attitudes which reduce all the unnecessary suffering of life. And eventually you find your way out of samsara by these means.
Ajahn, our final question today is from Sun Tzu. Can I choose to reincarnate in a Buddhist family?
You can't just simply make that decision, but you can put in causes that would optimize that result, that would lead to beneficial rebirth. We can't just snap our fingers and make these things happen, but we put in the kind of preliminary causes that would lead to that type of result. It's kind of like going to school or maybe going to university, that you put in causes that you can't just decide what job you're going to have, but you get training and put in causes that would increase the likelihood that you will end up in the situation that would be conducive to your preferences. So that's how you do it. So this is the last Santa Fe transmission, and we will be back at Birken Forest Monastery in the mountains of British Columbia, and see you next week.